All right, here we go. Rocking, ready to go. It's Rivers Corbett, and this is the HeadSpace for Entrepreneurs podcast, and where we talk to amazing entrepreneurs from around the planet, from all kinds of different disciplines, doing really cool things to make impact. And the gentleman that I have on the podcast today is John Howard. And John came to me. I was into a debate on Facebook, and I can't remember. It was within the last month. And John, I don't remember when this happened or not. But I was into a debate, and the feed was going on, and someone came out and they said, John came with some facts. Boom, 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 boom. And then below that feed came this woman who said, well, look, she said, you need to make sure you've got the credibility to give these facts. You know, in the medical world are the ones that can do this. And John, being the humble guy he is, came back and had to really put the person in her place. He says, well, actually, I am a doctor. And I thought, wowza, you know, how wonderful is that to be able to have that ability to make that impact silently, but very impactfully. And so I got to hang out with John on Facebook. He and I have actually we're part of another organization which is all about bringing coaches together and so on to help entrepreneurs be successful. So I wanted to bring John onto the conversation with the HeadSpace for Entrepreneurs podcast, and particularly another reason is that it related to an article that John wrote, and the article related specifically to, and I'm just trying to find it in my notes here, he called it the impossible dream. And the reference points to the impossible dream. This is what he wrote. He wrote, the man of La Mancha, the impossible dream, or Cinderella's It's Impossible. Dreams by definition are not supposed to start with reality. They are supposed to be fantastic, incredible, birth from hopes, desires, and possibilities, projects of imagination and creativity, written by John Maxwell. You can go as far as your dreams will take you. If you can believe it, you can achieve it. And the article goes on, and I'll post this in the podcast feed, but it came to me at a time that I really needed that message. And because I was having a bad day, and I really needed that message about making sure that I could focus on what it was that I was trying to achieve, my dream, my legacy, if you want to call it. Anyway, make a long story short, I reached out to John and I said, John, I need you to come on the podcast because I wanted you to share your insights. I want you to share your talent. I want you to share how you would ultimately bring this practice, because he's a medical doctor, this practice of leadership of helping people achieve their impossible dreams to our audience today. So long entrance to say, Dr. John, welcome to the HeadSpace for Entrepreneurs podcast.
Thanks, Rivers. Great to be here. Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, I remember that, man, now, because I love both those songs, you know, The Impossible Dream and It's Possible from Cinderella.
Yeah. And, well, I actually went on Spotify right after I read that. And I got to tell you, I like the Impossible Dream one better. I'm a big Broadway play guy, so yeah. I like that. So they're all good. So your story did not start in the coaching world. You were in medicine. You were practicing medicine. You had a unfortunate issue in your life where you were forced to make a change in your life because of health-related issues. I presume things are good now?
Yeah, things are good. Things are stable. I still have some residual stuff going on, but overall functioning and good. Yep.
That's really great stuff. Well, you made a, you know, most people say, well, I made a pivot. Well, you were kind of forced into a pivot of having to move on from your medical career and really begin a journey of what next. And you didn't get into what it is you're doing now. And I think that that's an important journey message that you want to convey to people, is that sometimes you just got to put your feet forward and move through it. And then you'll finally be able to find, through an open mind, an open heart, that you will ultimately find what it is that you want to work for. So can you give us a quick dirty of hair. This is what happened to me for 5 or 6 years before I finally caught on to what it is that I wanted to do. And what was that light bulb moment where you said, this is it?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, I do preach that a lot. Sometimes I'm big on vision. You got to script a vision out, because how do you get to where you're going if you don't know where you're going? But at the same time, it's a balancing act. You really got to get going before you really know where you're going to go, or where that final destination is. So in that respect, you're right. Yeah, I did have this unfortunate incident. Won't go into detail, a neuromuscular thing, and I was incident, and I have some weakness, and I was an interventional radiologist, which is basically a radiologist that does a lot of procedures under X-ray guidance, kind of like a cardiologist in a cath lab, and couldn't do that anymore. So and I love what I did.
Yeah, of course.
Sadly, you see these docs now that are not quite as happy and burnt out, or that's the term that's knocked around a lot. But I love what I did. But I was forced to quit, and honestly, for a couple of years, I was, or at least a year and a half, I was kind of in a dark place. Honestly, I mean, if truth be known, if I actually saw a psychiatrist, they probably would have diagnosed me with clinical depression. But again, I'm going to cut to the end of that, and my 2 kids came into me one day, my 2 oldest girls, and they saw me sitting in my bedroom one day, and they just said, like, who are you? Who are you?
Yeah.
I mean, we just don't know this, this dad that, was always a go-getter and always active and always trying new things and encouraging them. And it really kind of kicked me in the gut. And, I just kind of, pulled myself up, and I looked around and started looking at things, and real estate had always intrigued me, and started studying some real estate courses and reading books, and I stepped into it. I did step into it because, my personality, it comes from a physician, as well as being kind of for those that know DISC personality profiles, more of a C-wired, although I'm kind of a CD, DC, analytical type. You want to be a perfectionist at times. And perfectionists can be really a death knell. It can be a real dream killer. I mean, right. It really can be a dream killer. And my back was up against the wall. I wanted to make things happen, and I said, I just can't move along those lines anymore. So I started, my idea was to buy a couple of properties here. My health was still kind of shaky, and oversee them. And again, I'm going to fast forward this for you, but I had this vision. Me and my wife had this vision of a couple properties, manage those. But again, we started. We learned, we grew, our awareness expanded. We were willing to step into that through that next door without really knowing it. And, about 3 or 4 years later, and 6 different states, and close to 50 different holdings, whether they're rental holdings or flips or whatever, we expanded that into a property management company, 2 asset holding companies. And again, not to make it sound like it was some impressive thing, but it was an impressive thing. I mean, we felt good about it, and we did well, and it was a great experience. But I could have looked at that as impossible. What skills did I have for medicine that really translated? What kind of talents? What kind of knowledge? What kind of intuitive sense did I have to transfer? And that's why a lot of docs get stuck, because they have all this education. What am I going to do? And I didn't really quite realize it at the time, but many of those skills were transferable. I mean, I think we were successful as we were, because many were transferable. And I think people have this idea that it is impossible because this is what I know, this is all I've done, this is my narrow lane. And the reality of it is, you have so much more life experiences, you have so much more knowledge, so much more talent that's untapped, and so much more potential you can reach if you allow yourself to reach it. And
does the medical field talk about business as in an entrepreneurship way, or does it just, no, this is who we are, we're technicians, we're not business people, we're here to serve the health of individuals, and just to consider us a business is just taboo. We don't do that type of stuff.
No, I mean, when I went through it, not at all. It's a very fair statement. Now, there are some tendencies in medical school to have a little bit. I mean, there's actually a few medical schools that have an MD, MBA program.
Oh, so that's interesting.
Yeah, so there's more awareness of it. But it's still not a big part of it. It really is not. These guys still come out financially illiterate. That's why one of the things booming online now is, financial courses for you guys out there that are into finance, financial courses for medical students and residents getting out of, incredible amounts of debt. So it's still very weak, whether it's getting out of debt or just basic budgeting or how to run a business. There's actually not even any courses on how to run a medical practice. I mean, amazingly enough, or how to deal with billing companies or medical insurance and all the other things you got to, or electronic medical records.
Do you find that nuts that you go to school?
Yeah.
And they don't teach you financial skills. It just blows me away. I mean, it happens here too, brother. Don't get me wrong. It's not immune to everybody in the world, but that just blows me away. The School of Higher Education doesn't teach you about how to thrive from a financial perspective.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Or just even basic operational stuff. It's kind of crazy. I'm sure you don't want me to go on this tangent, but I'm too enticed.
We could, by the way. Yeah.
I'm too enticed because I was talking to a pastor the other day. I mean, these guys go for some of these. It was actually a Catholic priest. They go to seminary for 4 years, and the amount of time they actually spend on interpersonal relations, like pastoring, is like a couple of months. And the amount of time they spend on church administration is like almost nothing. So it's not necessarily, my point is not to get off on a tangent, but it's not necessarily unique to medicine.
Right.
Although it's a glaring omission. So,
so you had the real estate, you were successful there. What happened? What happened next?
Well, I kind of gravitated back to my kind of analytical nature in me, and started a consulting firm where it was mainly project management. So I would go into radiology imaging centers, and we would purchase $2, $5, $10 million worth of equipment, roll out electronic health records, revamp entire billing systems. So very, very project management oriented. But while I was doing that, and even before then, even when I was managing my own practice and reflecting back on it, I wasn't the greatest managing partner, really. I thought I was so good. Like, why don't these guys understand what we need to do? Trying to beat it into them instead of leading, instead of communicating, instead of connecting, instead of persuading. And it was only later through doing a lot of consulting and project management that I realized that so many issues that get hung up, whether it's consulting or in project management or reflecting back on my medical practice, they all boiled down to wasn't how much this costs or what piece of equipment or who's going to run it. It was leadership issues, it was communication issues, it was connecting issues, and it was so I really got very interested in that. And how leadership is so critical, how communicating is so critical. And that led me to, while I was still doing this project management, to get 2 coaching certifications. So I'm certified through the Physician Coaching Institute out in Seattle, as well as the John Maxwell Certification Coaching.
Nice.
So it really interested me to do that, and that got me more into moving a little bit away from the hard skills that I had developed through medicine. I actually have a master's in business as well. So, and I was the managing partner for 20 years. And we didn't want to talk about that. So, I was very fluent in at least when it came to medicine, some marketing, sales, reading financial statements, and it really kind of excited me toward the softer skills. But then, while I'm doing this, I'm talking to, even though I haven't been practicing now for several years, I'm talking to more and more docs, and like we had talked about a few minutes ago earlier in the discussion about how there's so much frustration. There's so much guys being burnt out. And
okay, I'm going to stop you there if I could, John. Sorry to interrupt. What do you mean by you were talking to them? Because the way I say that this is very important from an entrepreneur's perspective is to talk and listen. So, I mean, you just kind of threw it out there, and I know it wasn't just a bunch of guys around having a beer. There was something that intrigued you, and you kept focusing on learning more about that pain point. And as an entrepreneur, when you find a pain point and are able to solve it, then there's opportunity. So can you talk about that, quote unquote, listening and talking to doctors, how you did that?
Extremely insightful, because I'm glad that was a perfect place to interrupt me. Because
Okay, good.
no, really, because it sparked what really blew my mind about this and what really got me going down this track working with physicians. So I'm in the Physician Coaching Institute training program.
Mm,
And most of it was learning how to, to coach and to listen, and that as a coach, really
yeah.
sharpen your active listening skills. And while we're going through that, and there's a couple of young docs there coaching them, doing three-way coaching to learn, but we're also reading a lot of articles, reading and listening to each other, and in any event, what blew my mind was that the morale of younger physicians is as low as older physicians.
Wow.
And yeah, and it blew my mind from a reality point of view, and at the same time, it saddened me. It really just
Of course.
because as much as it disturbs me, guys my age, I sort of understand it, right? They went from being autonomous to employed. They've lost, control. They are now, working for big hospital systems. They're using medical record systems that they can't stand because they're looking at computer screens rather than talking to patients. They're dealing with administrators that used to make half what they make. Now they make 4 times what they make. So, I can understand the older guys, but why are the younger guys like this? Why are the younger guys like this? And we can go into a big discussion why that is. But the point is that it was really not, when I say talking to them, it was really more listening, reading, speaking with some of them. And it really struck me that what's going on here? Why is this happening? And, what can we do about it? And it was also 2 other things simultaneously happening there. Many of them and older guys were leaving medicine, and they were embarking on different things that, although I said skills are transferable, they are, but they were lacking in certain areas. So they might need help in those areas. But the other thing that I've noticed, and I notice it to this day, and I don't mean to sound critical, because maybe some of these guys do know what they want, but I see it all the time in these physician groups. Hey, come do this real estate investment. Come do syndicate. You want to invest in syndicates. You want to automatically have 10 rentals. You want to become a biotech person. You want to be a financial analyst for pharmacy. So there's this heavy recruitment. There's this heavy luring. And I don't necessarily ascribe bad intentions to the people that are luring, but these physicians are in a bad spot because they're trying to run away from something. And, are they really running toward these other things that look so sexy and so great for freedom, or are they running away? So really resonated with me to pivot into what I'm doing now, which is helping physicians that think they want to leave, at least they think they want to leave, even for some healthcare related industry. It might be big pharmacy, insurance, utilization management, biotechnology, or it could be an entrepreneur of any sort. I mean, heck, maybe some guy wants to open a restaurant, or maybe it's
no, don't do it.
right, or an antique shop, or maybe it's a guy that
not a bed and breakfast.
Yeah, right, exactly. Can you imagine? Boy, I did the restaurant business too when I was younger. It's 24/7.
Yeah. I was too. I had a few of them, and Anyway, sorry, keep going.
It's hard, but or guys that want to do side stuff, or maybe full time, real estate, whatever. And so, maybe some of them do want to do that, but it kind of disturbed me, because I actually do know a couple of guys in town that have left, and one of them is actually going back to medicine because they were just as miserable when they got out of it.
Yeah. So here's a question. Sorry to interrupt, but this is interesting, because when I think of this journey you're explaining to me, I think of my daughter, and she's 25, and she regards herself as a runner. And she says, I'm always there's something over on the other side that's got to be more attractive than what it is that I'm doing here. And so are people running in that situation, or are they genuinely interested in what's going on quote unquote the other side where the grass is greener?
I think there's a little bit of both, but I do think there's a lot of more running away, and they're confused. And with this mass exodus of young guys, and this whole industry of luring docs to certain things. And again, I know I make it sound like it's bad intentions, but they're really just providing a service to a need that, these guys are coming. So I don't mean to sound like that. But, it really struck a chord in me to this is my avatar. This is my ideal client. And I struggled with that a little bit because I knew I was interested. And then it kind of dawned on me, Rivers, it's kind of like, it's me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's me.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
It's the guy that left and became an entrepreneur and basically has been a serial entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
And so, but as opposed to saying, okay, I got all this entrepreneur experience, I can teach you courses in finance and sales and marketing. What I do is I insist on a front-end process that I call the 7 diagnostic steps from chaos to clarity. And it's basically a deep, intensive vision coaching that really tries to get clear. And I called it that because I liken it to a medical workup. The initial part is you come in for your history and physical, then you get some labs and imaging done, and that in our world that would be assessments like DISC or strength finders.
Yeah, your avatar can relate to that journey.
Right. And then we come up with possibilities. I call that the differential diagnosis phase. And then we kind of pick a diagnosis, right? We choose a diagnosis. But even after that, so I liken it to that. But even after that, I want to test it. So I have a testing phase, which I liken to a second opinion or a consultation, whatever. So, because it's really important, I want to make sure these guys, really know what they want to do. Now, of course, you can't be 100%. And and I see some guys that go through this, they find a different environment in medicine. What they end up realizing is, I love medicine. I want to stay in medicine. I just don't want to stay there. Or I want to stay there, but I want to see if I can change my environment, and we see if they can do that. Or I want other outlets. So I'm all about the entrepreneurship track and helping these guys. If they're going to leave, they're going to leave. If they want to go down these roads, I help them through that road because it's a road I travel. But before we get to that, I really insist on that. And, unless, there's a few guys that they really are very, very convincing. Okay, we might skip that. But generally, I insist on, we're going to go through the 7 diagnostic steps, chaos to clarity. And we're going to really do some very deep, intensive coaching. I'm going to do a lot of good listening. We're going to do assessments. We're going to talk about it more. We're going to see if you can narrow down, where are your strengths? What do you love to do? What can you be engaged in with a fair amount of time? And it just resonates with me. So, I did all these things these last several years. I love what I did. The real estate was fun. The consulting was fun, but this is more impactful. This is getting back, in a strange way, Rivers. This is getting back to being a physician. It's almost getting back to being a treating physician. Now, I know as coaches and consultants, it's we're not as attached to the outcome, and we need to have somewhat of an arm's length. But you know what? These are my brothers and sisters in medicine. And, I want to see if they can be happy wherever they're at. If that means staying where they're at, or if that means going down an entrepreneurial road.
So a couple of questions come into play. The first one is, tell us, here's the first question. How was it? I mean, this stuff is out there for the doctor world, the medicine world. How were you embraced? How were you accepted? If you weren't, bringing this message, this methodology, and I'm not talking about, part of the value what you bring, you is one of them. So you can really understand the journey. But when you started to share with them what you were going to do to help them, did they go, dude, you're whacked? Or did they embrace it?
It's an interesting thing, and I don't know that it's any different in any other industry. I mean, I don't have it off the top of my head, but what's the scripture thing that talks about a prophet in his own city, right?
Yeah.
Right? The prophet in his own city. I got a little bit of that in my early consulting days. There's always going to be those docs, and maybe it's a higher percentage in other industries. I don't know. That are very skeptical of one of their own all of a sudden being an expert in a different area. Even if he's had multiple other entrepreneurial successful ventures, even if he has coaching certifications, no matter what, there's those guys that are just skeptical of of that. But like anything else, Rivers, and you know this, I mean, like anything else, you're going to resonate with the people you resonate with.
That's right.
And for the most part,
and you don't have to win them all, do you? You don't have to have them all as customers. You're just going to have a handful to really make it worthwhile.
Exactly. All in all, in the world that I live in, because a lot of us communicate together as Facebook groups with, physicians helping other physicians, physician coaches, consultants. I mean, they love it. It's a little bit of a twist of what they're doing. I mean, obviously, some of them do something similar to what I do. So it resonates with the people it needs to resonate with, I guess, is the best answer I can give you. But there is that skepticism, and I sometimes I wonder if it's worse in medicine because we tend to be a little bit more analytical, cynical bunch, because it's kind of natural. We read journal articles, we're kind of skeptical. Is this really true?
Yeah.
And we analyze things more. We want to make sure the drug's going to work, not harm the patient. I used to work with devices. So, I mean, I wouldn't jump into using something unless I was confident it was so. Right. So it's kind of inbred for us to be that way. But
okay.
Yeah.
So you had, and that makes sense. I mean, that does make sense about that's one of our own to solve this problem. But you've obviously found traction, and so to take the entrepreneur journey more further, whatever it is, what is your marketing / sales process look like to get a client?
Well, right now so from the very beginning, the 7 diagnostic steps. So basically, I mean, as you've seen, I'm a pretty prolific writer. So it's a lot of it is I use all methods basically. So I'm using free traffic. I got 2 different people working on keywords, SEO optimization, et cetera. Because I really think that's going to be the big thing with physicians. I think most physicians are, there are some large Facebook groups, but I think most physicians start out on Google, non-clinical job in this, job in that. Yeah, yep. So I utilize that. I boost things on Facebook. I use some Facebook ads, and that's pretty much what I'm doing. A lot of it's referral now from other people. There is a good, we do the same thing that other industries do, just like all these big marketing gurus, they're all selling each other's products. So, I mean, I was talking about real estate. There's a couple of docs that have a very successful real estate course. So they talk about my entrepreneurial course. There's a doc that's financial work, and he talks about my entrepreneurial course.
Nice.
And,
little joint venture mode happening.
Yeah, it's exactly. Little joint venture mode, little ads, little boosting, a lot of organic. Obviously, like any marketer, there's nothing unique to me is, once you get them in that funnel, is to have, high quality follow-up, products they can consume. And, at this point, I'm fairly involved. I mean, I still do a fair amount of one-on-one coaching and there's group coaching with the courses. So it's pretty typical to other continuity models where you try to, you get them into the front door with the 7 diagnostic steps, and then generally it'll lead down the entrepreneurial track. And I'll leave it up to them whether I always believe people should start with the soft skills first, mindset. I have 2 courses in mindset, leadership, communication. But again, I'm not sitting here. I'm a coach / consultant, so I'm not in any dictatorial mode. If the person, wants to go down the, more of a marketing, sales, finance, operations route, then we'll go down that route because they're modular anyway.
Yeah, look, and that's so on that basis. How, when I think of the medical profession, and that's your avatar, I think of busy. Do you fire customers that aren't following your system? Say, look, it's time for you to move on.
I haven't had to fire, but I haven't renewed. for a few that wanted to renew.
That's a fire, by the way, John.
Yeah.
Or a breakup, whatever you want to call it.
Right. I basically said, maybe if somebody else would resonate with you. You're not following. And again, it's nothing necessarily that I entirely prescribe. Right. We come up with this blueprint together. Like any good coach would do. So they actually help. I just help put it into concrete terms what this blueprint looks like. So, but they co-create it, right? We co-create it together.
Sure.
And they're not following their own map, and maybe different strokes for different folks. Maybe they would resonate with someone else. It's kind of a polite way of saying, it's probably time to move on. Well, luckily, that's less than a handful. So
yeah, sure. Again, it's the question was asked more so. I mean, you're a man of great principle, of great reputation. And what I wanted to do is have the listeners hear that, it's okay to let a client go. Don't be hanging out with somebody that's just not resonating with you, even though they're a customer giving you money. If they're not, quote unquote, following your plan or using your products the way they should, they're more doing a disservice to you than they are to themselves, I think, by not doing it.
Right, and it's interesting you say that as well, because also don't the customer that brings you down or is just so negative, or I mean if that's it's not necessarily, you can try to help them for a while, but some people are just set in those ways, and that's one reason why I gravitated toward this area versus the strict burnout area, because sadly those positions really are some of those that are deeper burnt out and don't really have any inclination to do something different. They just want to wallow in the burnt out. And right. I don't mean to be that in a negative way. Some of them really are abused in their systems. But those guys really need dedicated. There's some phenomenal coaches. Assuming it's not something more serious, they need a psychiatrist or a psychotherapist, which may be the case. The suicide rate is double the national average for physicians. It's terrible. So there's really some phenomenal coaches out there that's all they deal with. And that's, if that's the kind of person, then I refer them out. So I'm dealing more with the guy. There's almost always a part of that, but they have a little bit more optimism to say, I really want to do something. I want to make something out of this. If it's staying in medicine or become an entrepreneur or going into pharmacy, whatever it is, they have a little bit more, positive outlook on life.
Do you have a story that a doctor turned entrepreneur, not you, that you say that was cool what they discovered, even if they went back to medicine? Again, this is the journey of discovery that I'm trying to bring out in this conversation, amongst other things, to our audience, that it's okay to discover. It's fun to discover. It doesn't mean it has to be permanent. But is there one customer, one client of yours to say, though, that was a cool journey?
Wow,
and you don't have to mention their names, by the way. You just
yeah, there's several. I don't know how they'll resonate with the listeners, but they were amazing to me. There was this one younger doctor, female, actually from overseas, but I think U.S. citizen, and just unhappy where she was at, and she was looking to she really didn't know what she wanted, right? And that's perfect for my vision scripting. Right?
Yes, of course.
She just didn't really know what she wanted, and she ended up starting a Facebook. She ended up getting on Facebook and talking to other people, and she thought she would help other female physicians, kind of cope with this process of not enjoying of medical school or residency, and really with no set thing. So we went through things, and we talked about things, and it kind of dawned on both of us, in some of her assessments and just the way she was reacting, that she kind of liked to talk, right? Which is good for a coach, right? You need to listen. She kind of liked to talk, and she was really good. She was really good at articulating. She was okay at writing. I don't know how long you want me to drag this out, but long story short,
if you hear me asleep, then that's over.
Long story short, she had no intention. She basically had an intention to form kind of a support group for a year and then figure something out. She's now one of the most sought after female speakers, medical doctors in the country.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
She is, and she started doing virtual speaking as well, way before COVID ever hit.
Yeah.
So she is a keynote speaker, speaking to women entrepreneur groups basically all over the country, has a massive Facebook group now, and also does a fair amount of her writing's gotten much better. Somebody's helping her, and is in many, probably at least 20 different articles.
Is she practicing still?
She practices a little bit. She practices about 20%, which I'm not sure what that means, honestly. I haven't talked to her in a few months. I think
20% from 200 hours a week.
Yeah,
It's still 40 hours a week.
I think that probably means at this point she's managing the practice and she's got a couple of other physicians actually working.
Right.
Clinical
Oh,
work.
that's a great story.
There's another guy that followed my steps in real estate and made it much bigger. Again, a guy who thought he probably wanted to do that, didn't quite know, but he again, I'll give you the 10-second version of it. I mean,
sure,
he's formed one of these real estate courses for docs, and he also has a membership site now, teaching docs how to invest in real estate.
Nice.
I mean, the guy is. Probably doubled his income of what he was making with a membership site teaching, mainly residential rentals, kind of like what I did. So, the brilliance there is, again, he initially started thinking, he wanted to do, syndications or commercial. So as we talked, he realized he likes the idea of going into Lowe's and pricing things out and doing residential stuff. And the brilliance of his membership is he's not everybody to everything. He niched down, and I'm the guy for you guys. If you want to learn how to do residential rentals, I'm the guy for doctors. I mean, how much of a niche is that, right?
It's pretty good, man. It's pretty good.
So that's a couple of people.
I love it. I love it. Jordan, can you remove your niche from this conversation at this point in time, and can you talk about some fundamentals that an entrepreneur, whether they're a professor now, whether or not they're a government bureaucrat or whatever, and they are in that same position your client is in, what are some fundamentals that they can focus in on now to start them on their journey to get to where ultimately they're doing what they should be doing, or at least exploring what they should be doing? You understand the question?
Yeah, I do. And I think I could start in so many places. I'm going to start in a place which may sound confusing at first, but I hope it won't be. And I think and this takes time to realize, but and I hope you don't mind. This comes from a made in God's image, basically mindset. Okay, without necessarily invoking the Christian God.
Dude, I am there, man. I am there. I'm with you.
But I just believe, again, we're not perfect as God is perfect. Okay, but we were given the faculties, right? Most of us were blessed with the faculties of imagination and curiosity and intuition and exploration. I mean, all you have to do is look at a 1 or 2 year old to realize that. Okay.
Yeah.
All you have to do is look at a 1 or 2 year old. Then you can even look at the 4-year-old that gets on the bike and falls down 4 or 5 times. What does the 4-year-old say when he falls off the bike? He says, stupid bike, right? He says, stupid bike, right?
Yeah, he does.
But 10 years old, the little kid at Little League in the baseball bat, he doesn't say stupid bat, he says stupid me. Somewhere along the way, we forget that we're endowed with incredible gifts of imagination, of curiosity, of all the gifts that we have, right? And you couple that with, I don't care what you've done. You don't have to be a doctor what I've done, okay? I worked in the restaurant business for a while. I learned all kinds of skills and talents and came across all kinds of people. And you combine your natural, innate abilities, if you would let them flourish just even a little bit, and you allow your talents and skills and experience from other industries that you don't think are applicable, but I guarantee you many of them are, and you allow them to blossom, you allow them to, and you allow yourself to dream. Okay, this is not fairy tale stuff there. Allow yourself to dream of what you really want to do, understanding you have those innate abilities, understanding you have that past, and allow yourself to dream of what you really want to do. And don't question the how yet. Write down, see it, smell it,
Yeah.
think it,
Yeah.
envision where you want to be. Forget about the how. The how is going to come later. You know, I think you need to tap into that, because until somebody taps into that, whether you tapped into it, you know, like I tapped into it mainly because my back was against the wall because, you know, I had to do something, or you tap into it because it's more natural flowing from you. You know, only until you do that are you going to step beyond. You know, I know it's a cliche term and it's a worn out term, that comfort zone, but I don't know of a better word to describe, you know, where we're all sort of comfortable. But the thing is, unfortunately, most of us are miserably comfortable, right? We're miserably comfortable. So if you want to be happily comfortable, break through that. And the only way to break through that and to get into those areas where you fear is to do things small steps, small steps, small steps,
Right.
but go toward that vision. Know you have that innate ability. Know you have those experiences. Take those small steps. Practice, prepare, practice, prepare. I don't know if I answered your question, but I really believe it all starts up between the ears. I mean, you know, I could talk about talking about leadership and communication, or learning a little bit of entrepreneurship, you know, study some basic finance. But honestly, if you don't have it in between the ears of what you're capable of doing, and I don't care what personality you are, you don't have to be you know, an extrovert, flighty person to say I can do everything. No, you can be an analytical guy like I am, and you still got to have it in between the ears to know that you're gifted, and you're gifted with your own experiences to dream about what you want to do, and you gotta make those small steps day by day, daily consistency.
A couple of thoughts come from what you just said. One of them, and I wrote a blog article on this. I said, remember, the turtle won the race. So that's the first thing. And the second one is, and I am a faithful guy, and I'm willing to share it, not from a pulpit perspective, but from a faith perspective of this is what I believe is that God's gift to me is my talent, and my gift to God is what I do with my talent. And you have as a person, you have a responsibility to find that gift, because here's what I do know is that you would tell your children to do this. So why aren't you telling yourself to do it in this miserable comfort zone that you happen to be in? So I'm glad you took us down that journey. Now I'm going to put you on the spot, and this is something we talked about when we started the conversation. We're coming near the end of the conversation. I could go on for a long time. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, this is the first time I've ever talked to John. We talked on Facebook and LinkedIn and so on, but the first time we've ever talked together, and it's been a real joy to do this. When we first started this conversation today, before we started the recording, you said, "Yeah, I'm getting pretty negative these days." How is that possible when you just said what you said? And how do you get out of it? And I know it's possible because you are human and you can't stop the world, but you're impacting, getting hearless negative messaging and so on. And I think this is a conversation around how do people get out of the funk that they're in by just sharing with us what you did, not necessarily what they should do, but what you did.
Yeah, I think what I do is I realize, what I can control and what I can't control, right? And the only person that I can control is me. So I have to control, my thoughts. And how do you control your thoughts to some extent is you could control what you're consuming, and you control what you're exposed to, and you focus on the things that are more meaningful. So you try to focus on whether it's your work or your family or relationship or whatever else is going on, some organization or whoever it might be, relationship. You focus on what you can control, and and I think it's also I'm not sure we talked about this when we came on, but you focus on what you can control, and you focus on those positive things, and you try to advance the ball. But I think it is probably good to, because I know I've had it myself. I've had a couple of conversations about some of these issues over the last couple of weeks with other people that you feel comfortable with, and you can have those conversations. And so I've done that as well, and that's helped.
Nice.
But it's really these things exist, and I'm not going to paint a pretty picture. I mean, hopefully we'll come out of it. We'll come out of it stronger, and we'll learn some things and improve some things. but ultimately, you got to model yourself, and until you can control yourself and model good behavior, good attitude, love, and that's what you got to show, and that's what we got to get a hold of. And yeah, I did let it slip a little bit today, and like you said, you let me off the hook. You said we're all human, and we are, because I was consuming a little bit too much of the reading too much of the Facebook stuff, and
yeah, it's so easy to get sucked into it.
Yeah, you just get sucked into it. But yeah, it's
all good.
We're all human, which is a great point. When I said the things that I said 5 minutes ago, as if it's easy. No, it's not easy to realize
no, it's not.
You have those gifts, and it's not easy to take those steps every day. But that's where you got to tap into what you really want out of life, and where you want to get. And if it's important enough to you, you've got to, you're going to have those days, but you got to get through them. You got to get through them and control what you can't control, and derive the purpose and meaning that you want out of life.
Well, I'll subscribe back to what I said about, the ask your children. That's when I'm coaching, quote unquote. So I'm not as much I'm building businesses now, not as much from a coaching perspective, but when I get asked for advice, that's typically my go-to question at some point in the conversation. What would you tell your children? And of course, everybody wants what's best for their children. They're going to tell them exactly what they should do. Not necessarily will they do it, but they'll come up with the right answer every single time. And I think we need to do that more for ourselves, is say, what would our kids tell us to do?
Well, and sometimes they do know best, because I remember early on in the conversation, what kicked me in the gut and got me thinking straight again was my 2 girls coming into that dark bedroom.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So you're exactly right.
How old are they?
Now they're 30 and 28.
Nice. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, they're older.
Mine are. I have a 25-year-old and a set of twins that are 21, and it's a lovely journey right now when you can become friends.
Yeah.
And go to them for advice, and they come to you for advice, but also, of course, be the father.
Right.
And that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
John, how do people get a hold of you, sir? How do they follow you? How do they hang out with you? You say you're doing a lot of writing. I know you're on Facebook. I know you're on LinkedIn.
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Facebook mainly. John Howard MD. So there's probably a lot of John Howards out there, but if you find John Howard MD, and LinkedIn is the same. I do a fair amount of writing on LinkedIn, and my website is johnhowardmd.com. So John Howard. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward.
Were you able to get that for $10 a year? No one else had it?
Yeah, no one had that. I tried to get John Howard at first, so that was impossible. I actually spoke to that guy. He wouldn't sell it.
Did you? Well, funny story with that. I many years ago, I bought riverscorbett.com, and the guy that was managing it for me didn't renew the membership for it. And so at one point in time in my career, that URL was going for $5,000. Now, to put it in perspective, it's only going for $600 now. So my trade's dropped a bit. John, this has been a real joy, my friend. I can't thank you enough for giving me your time. I'm going to make it an effort to stay in contact with you and become more of a friend than we are now, because you're the type of people that I want to hang out with. So thank you for your time.
The feeling is mutual, and thank you for the opportunity as well. Appreciate it very much.
No problem. You got a bit of homework to do. Send me that picture, and then we're going to get this recording up. Have a good day, my friend.
All right, you too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.